what behaviors are most important and what can or can't you do to help change that to
Mm.
help increase your odds of wealth accumulation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and again, thank you for having me, and thank you guys for joining today. I appreciate it, and again, that, like you said, Tara, this was my father's life work for sure. So it means a lot just to our family that people are still interested in this topic. But I think for individuals that are building wealth, it's hopefully it's useful and timely and all that as well. But in terms of the behaviors, it's been pretty consistent that living below your means tends to be just that frugality piece tends to be what essentially differentiates those that are prodigious accumulators of wealth, those that really take whatever income they have and transform it into wealth, as compared to those under accumulators of wealth. So that frugality is one of those. It's an attitude, it's a personality, it's a lot of different things kind of combined together. But it really does tend to differentiate those that are successful in terms of accumulating wealth. And one of the things I think you and I, Tara, have talked about some is, how do you, maybe I'm not frugal, right? So maybe I didn't grow up that way. I didn't see it modeled by my parents. Maybe it was negative. Maybe I had negative experiences with frugality or, not spending, let's say, while I was growing up. How do you then take that and maybe take on an attitude of frugality just for a season while you're trying to build wealth? Well, there are a lot of different things that you can certainly do, but one of them is to remember and focus on your own goals versus the goals of others around you. That kind of dovetails into this concept of not worrying about what everybody else is doing. And what you find from, again, whether we're talking about millionaires in the 90s or the women that my father studied in the 2000s to today, millionaires and those that tend to be really successful, even those that aren't millionaires yet, but that are well on their way, tend to ignore what individuals are doing around them. So one of the things we talk about a lot in the book, we touch on, I would say maybe not talk about too much, but is this idea that as social media has increased, our ability to see what everyone else is doing has skyrocketed. So it's not just the fact that my neighbors are driving brand new cars or my coworkers have certain subscriptions or go on vacations and certain, multiple times a year. I'm seeing that from my high school friends or my, my people
Mm-hmm.
that I've met once or twice, but now it's influencing what I'm doing. And so, I think that, again, being able to ignore that or at least acknowledging it first and then growing into being able to ignore that is really important as well. And then finally, just educating yourself and becoming confident and knowledgeable. We found from the research we've done at Data Points, but also the millionaire research as well, that those that are confident, not overconfident, not thinking you can, do it all or time the markets, like if you're talking about investing, but those that have enough knowledge and continue to build that knowledge and question things, those also tend to be those that can build wealth over time. So those are just a couple of the behavioral things that just come to mind as you shared some of those options on the poll there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that as you know, I study financial therapy, and one of the
Yep.
concepts we have is that the money story, having more money will make you happier. And
Right.
that gets back exactly to this. And normally the way that it works is, if you don't make as much as like your siblings or your
Right.
neighborhood, then you're unhappy and you think if you have more money, you'll be happier. But it really does get down to like you make your own happiness, and
Correct. Yep. Yep.
if you can be happy and satisfied with what you have. Also, Sarah Newcomb at Morningstar, another behavioral
Yeah.
economist, talks about role models, which is sort
Mm-hmm.
of related. That if you pick a, a role model that's not really achievable, you're actually going to be less satisfied with your life because you're trying to be something that is not really realistic. Whereas if you look
Mm-hmm.
around and like maybe pick an uncle that you admire and
Right.
has achieved the kind of life you want, that and then compare yourself to that in something that's achievable, that you'll have more satisfaction out of life in general.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. Also just simply setting goals that, small goals or even a few goals that can be reached and achieved can also make you satisfied with where you're headed. So not trying to take on, again, the book's called The Millionaire Next Door, and the new one's, has the millionaire in the title as well. Does it have to be millionaire? It doesn't have to be that right now. And I think that's really important to remember, that nothing is going to be accomplished if you're not breaking that down into small pieces, and that can lead to happiness versus setting these, not astronomical, but really, really high goals, and becoming frustrated, and then you're falling off the track, in terms of building wealth as well.
Yeah, I love the Data Point Wealth Builder survey.
I think that's it that I'm referring to,
that talks, and basically it's those characteristics that were in that first.
Yeah.
Actually, no, we haven't done that one yet, have we? No, we have a poll. Actually, let's do the poll, because then people can see what the characteristics are. That that can help you. So this is the poll. So these are the areas that help wealth accumulation. And the question is, which behavior do you think you struggle with the most?
You know my answer right away. I've analyzed my behavior.
And the Wealth Builder survey actually measures how you rank on each of these characteristics.
Yeah, and I can, if you want, that social indifference, sometimes that one's confusing. That just basically means that you can kind of ignore the kind of what's going on around you.
Social pressures.
Yeah, exactly, for spending and that kind of thing.
Right, that's actually one thing, I guess it was on the poll at the beginning that I was, one of the things from the book that I took away was like the neighborhood you live in. Like I never thought about that, but I guess it makes sense if you if all your neighbors have BMWs or something, you're like, oh, I need a BMW too.
Yeah. I think it's funny too. It's not even absolutely. That's one of the pieces, but it's, I guess even from, I think about this in my own life, and maybe you guys can relate, that have maybe made the transition from an apartment to a home, like owning your own home. It's like all of a sudden things you took for granted that you have to spend on in order to maintain that house. Well, if it's, if you multiply the square footage by 2 even, or as it becomes larger, that's more to keep up with. And so that's one of the pieces as well, but definitely the social pressure. You've got to join this club, you've got to join the, they've got to get your kids have to go to these camps, depends on what all of your neighbors are doing, and so that can influence and lead you off of a path.
One of the ways this book influenced me right away is Manhattan Beach is our nearby very, 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 very expensive homes, from 12 million to 2 million, say. And I was at a book club event in someone's backyard, and the backyard looked like a resort.
Okay. Yeah.
The house, for what I saw of it, looked like a Martha Stewart set. It was just very expensive and very beautiful. And normally I would have gone in like, wow, what do they do for a living? How are they doing this? This time I walked in, and the first thought in my mind is, boy, they spend a lot of money.
Right.
I don't know how much they make, but they spend a lot.
Right.
And the other thing that I realized, and I grew up in a more affluent neighborhood, that like the PTA expects you to contribute more to them. And the gifts to the teachers are more extravagant. And like the birthday presents are more, it's just like all those little things, and they really add up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it absolutely has to do with your neighbor. I mean, where you plant yourself is, definitely.
I know a woman who made the stretch to live in that. They really stretched to live in that community in a townhouse, and they were really scrimping and saving to be able to be in the best school district around.
Okay. Yeah.
And she had toddlers, and she was pregnant, and the people in the condos wanted to pay extra money to their trash service to take the trash cans from their house out to the dumpster. They didn't want to throw in trash.
Yep.
She couldn't afford it, so she dumped everyone's trash, pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a high cost to living with people who spend a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's no margin there, right? There's no way to kind of, be able to afford something that maybe is actually a necessity in that situation. If she's, that stretched, it would seem like as well. And that cannot lead to satisfaction. I would think, I mean, I would be stressed about that. Definitely.
So I do have the results of that last poll that I'm going to share. So the one
that is interesting.
Nobody thinks
we're a frugal
They struggle with frugality. Wow.
Yeah, no struggles with that. Okay, that's interesting.
Or control.
Well, and control is that one that I struggle with. That's the luck versus hard work. Which, and Sarah and I have had many conversations about this, because I see luck as hard work that meets opportunity. And so, yes, I've worked hard, but I've also been lucky enough to have the opportunities to take advantage of. And so I struggle with that one.
I bet if we talked about that one a little bit more, that might have come up more for people, because I think, it is when you see something that happens that's a negative, let's say you're whatever it might be, we're talking obviously about finance here, but, maybe you're trying to reach some kind of goal and you feel like something has impacted your ability to get there. It's a struggle not to look at your own behaviors. It's a struggle not to say, well, what could I have done to get past that? And I mean, I struggle with that too, but I voted for social indifference because I think of myself, I know you're not supposed to keep up with the Joneses, but sometimes you'll find yourself like wanting to purchase things that you have no idea why. Well, it's because, everybody on Facebook has it. Yep.
Whether you're aware of that influence or not, sometimes it's there regardless.
And I think a lot of, I've run into people who feel like they're social indifferent, and they are to a certain extent, like, they drive an old car, or they, they're not that big of a house or whatever. But then there's little things like the wedding for their kid has to be the $50,000, $60,000 wedding. And it's like, they're sort of like not related, but then there's certain things that they just can't. And especially when it comes to kids.
Yep. It's hard.
And I was going to say, actually, so I was in charge of the Girl Scout leaders in our area. And one of the problems that kept coming up was people wanted to have the parents pay for trips. And it's a Girl Scout thing that parents don't pay. Like the Girl Scouts sell their cookies so that they can do whatever activities they want. And we're in not an affluent neighborhood, but, a upper middle class kind of thing. And so the Girl Scout leaders wanted to have the parents pay for it. And I'm like, you can't do that, because you don't know that those parents can afford that expensive trip and they just couldn't wrap their head around it. And I know for a fact that there were parents that went into debt so that their daughter could go on whatever trip. And it was just
definitely
crazy.
Yep.
I feel like this one really relates with me. So I work in social media, digital marketing. So I'm on social media all the time. And it's just so interesting how in your book you talked about like targeted advertisements, and how not only you're seeing what like your friends and family are doing, but you're also getting advertisements shown to you all the time that are like what you want to buy. And it's hard. I'm sure a lot of people relate with this too, but I like understand where that's coming from. And most of the time I'm like, I don't need it. Like, I know that's an ad, I don't need it. But even with that control, I still fall for it. And I still find myself trying to keep up and adding those things to my cart. And
you can't help it. It's human. That's the way it's designed too. It's just,
they've got science behind it, lots and lots of data. They know they can essentially predict, when what's going to trigger, that behavior. And it's very, very challenging to ignore it. Even what I think that we've talked about this, Tara, maybe over email, but one of the things, or the suggestions, when you feel like that's something that, when you feel like you're influenced into buying decisions, is to obviously remove yourself from shopping situations, or situations where you may spend above your means to the extent that you can. But online, it's extremely difficult. So it's like, well, okay, does that mean I just need to decrease my social media time? We would say yes, based on what we see from millionaires in terms of the time that they spend online. But that's a real tricky one for sure, because it is, they have a lot of science behind what they're showing you, and it's working against you.
Well, actually, that's one way I find Tara a real inspiration, because she must spend every waking hour listening to really incredible podcasts. And
yes,
because every time I talk to her, there's a new theory or a new fact or a new way of looking at things that she knows.
And keeps me away from shopping. But,
right.
But what I was going to say actually is that that's sort of my mission too, is to counter some of that social media with healthy ways of looking at money and healthy ways of thinking about your life and setting goals that, like, because when you go shopping, like, is that actually making you happy, or is it actually stressing you out and causing you anxiety? And if it's causing you anxiety, then like, think about that, and what's a healthier way to spend your time.
Replacing that behavior or that habit. Absolutely. Yeah.
For me, it was more about confidence, that last question, than that social distraction or that feeling to keep up. For me, it was about confidence and like just having that confidence. Not that I don't know, I work here in this world, I'm trying to learn, I'm surrounded by it all the time, but it's still just that money story in the back that has that confidence that I lack.
And actually, it made me think of various highly talented people in the arts, and I'd add Steve Jobs to this, who just come up. My big hang up is clothing. Like, I need to spend money on clothing. I need it. And this book is making me think of people like Steve Jobs and Twyla Tharp and other people who just had a uniform.
Right, and wear it every day. Yeah.
Everything goes with everything, and it's the same.
A different shade of it.
Wait for sales because you know what you need, and it's making me think I need a uniform.
Well, so we do have another question, which is the inverse of the last one, which that last one was, what behavior do you struggle with? This one is, which one comes easiest to you? Frugality, confidence, control. And now you know a little bit more about.
Oh, I want to toggle between two answers. So.
Right.
Yeah, and I only give you the ability to have one answer.
Darn it, Tara.
Focus is, starting a task and finishing it without getting distracted.
I voted there.
Yeah, I call the focus shiny object syndrome, is what my husband calls my.
Yeah.
But
I wanted to choose. Go ahead.
Because of that, I've actually purposely focused on being more focused. And my daughter has a dog, and they're training it, and they said they've taught it to if it starts to chew on something, they say leave it. So my husband has started saying, if I get distracted, and leave it. So I found I say that to myself. If I get distracted, it's like, leave it, get back to it.
I don't do that at all with my children.
Oh gosh. Yeah, there's so many. There's some great tools out there for improving focus, like some of there's some apps and things like that too. That are out there that help you kind of not be distracted by things. But yes, I suffer from that as well.
So I actually started tracking my time, like all day, every day. And that also helps, because I really don't want to, and I know I've had a bad day when I have 15-minute chunks all day long, right? That means that I was scattered, and it's helped me be more focused also.
Yeah.
Okay, so here are the results. We have a frugal group here.
Yeah, definitely.
We've already decided that, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I chose.
Yeah, and interestingly, we were just working with a couple, and I had them take this, and it turned out they were like perfectly matched, but didn't realize it, that she was really like attentive to detail and really liked to track things, and he wasn't so good at that, but he was good at like control and decision making and things like that, which she was less good at. And he took care of the finances. They both said that, and he was satisfied with it. She was not satisfied with it. And when I talked to them, I was like, like he's keeping track of your books. So the wife should be keeping track of the books. And I said, you know, you probably think of it as a thorn in your side and it's like a nuisance. And she would like probably find it meditative and, you know, like relaxing. And I could just see the relief on his face when I said that. And she was like, yeah, that sounds great. Oh, wow. And so I suggested that they switched that role, and they were so happy about that. They thought that was, and they had never thought of it before. Right. But it was causing anxiety and stress within their relationship, and there was such a simple solution to it.
Yep.
Like, use your strength and get your weaknesses covered.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, definitely. Well, I saw, so it looked like, I can't remember.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna.
No, it's okay. I think it was like 20%. Yeah, for control. You did show it, but
okay.
So I'll go back to that control piece. So the flip side of feeling like that's easy, or feeling like you can control everything, is the anxiety that can come from that. So if you're very, very high on what's called locus of control in psychology, so that's what we measure with that piece, when things don't go your way, you can feel disappointment and anxiety about that. And so what we saw, especially in March and April, when COVID really started kind of rearing its head here in the US, was that the client, again, we hear this through the advisors that work with us, like Tara, like that the clients that they were having that were very, very high on control were feeling extremely anxious, because there was nothing, they could not control what was happening. Their kids were home from school. They're not going to work. And so I think that, again, recognizing that you can do some things, but there are some things that, again, back to the luck piece and kind of the randomness, so to speak, of what's happening, that you can't control everything. So there's always a flip side to being really high on something, or being really good at something, so to speak. And that's one of them.
Well, and I'll point out frugality, because I work with a lot of 70-plus-year-olds, 80 and 90-year-olds. And what I find is that they're super frugal. So they got to their 80s and 90s with quite a bit of wealth accumulated, but they had anxiety about spending $1.
Right.
And like, they don't want to, sell stock because they don't want to pay the tax, even though it's like, you're paying taxes because you made money. Like, you should be thankful about that. No, it's like, that doesn't fit my budget. And it's like, it's not a budget thing, so we have.
That's going to be me later.
Yeah. So some people can get stuck in being too frugal, and the Scrooge, example is a perfect
and that's
example of that.
That's absolutely, that's the negative one. I think that it just speaks to the fact that those patterns of behaviors and our personalities are pretty stable. And so, if you're thinking about the things you do need to change, recognizing that it can be tough too, to make, changes to the way that you do things. Particularly,
how do you make that change? How do you transition? So like into the investing world and breaking free of the money story you understand you have, I want to break through. That would be my biggest question to you, is what's a trick to break through that fear, that money story, that anxiety, any of it, of frugality, like being too frugal and now moving forward?
So, again, I'm an industrial psychologist and not a clinician, so I'll have to say that.
That's okay.
So I don't have a couch in my office. I don't have any of that kind of stuff. I think that, again, from the research that we have on like critical incidents and things like that kind of set the stage for a lot of the ways our patterns and our personality in life, to move past a lot of those, it is confronting them first and then deciding on a different path. So, I don't know how much you've done with that and sort of, used either kind of a therapeutic approach or a clinical approach to dive into what that, like you said, the money story, or often they're called scripts.
I mean, I'll say I'm right on the edge of, like, I understand it, I see it, I know where it came from.
Yeah.
But what's the change that will make me feel comfortable enough or help me transition into doing it so that it's in the best interest of myself and my family,
Right.
But I understand it all,
Well, and I think too, I mean, I don't know, Tara probably knows more about this than I do, but the idea of recognizing where you're heading and recognizing how that story may or may not be holding you back is something that you have to manage as well, and reminding yourself of where you're going versus what happened in the past. And that's overly simplistic, of course, but again, I'm looking at this from a statistics standpoint, not the therapeutic standpoint. So I probably would have to lean on Tara to help with that one.
And I would say that
get me through it.
Recognizing that there is a problem is often helps you immensely, and that's why I actually like the surveys that you have, is because it gives you feedback, and just knowing that you have a problem in this area usually moves the needle for people. But then, sometimes there is, and we call them flashpoints, what you were talking about, that, there's like something that happened that you sort of have to get over. And part of that is just processing it and being able to move on. And then that gets back to the 5 steps of change, which is recognizing that you need to do change, planning to make change, actually doing some change, maintaining it, I think is one. And then the last one is you're going to relapse. Like sometimes it's going to come back to
patterns.
You. And, just like for me, it's food. It's so funny because I can relate. Everybody's, when people have financial problems, it's like the exact same problem that I have with my food. So, I could slip up and have an ice cream cone that I wasn't planning on having. And if I beat myself up about it, I could slippery slope into a bad situation. Or I could just choose, that happened in the past. Okay, I shouldn't have done that. I'm starting fresh now and going forward. And that can really help you move forward too.
Yep.
But it's a process. It's not easy.
Correct. Yep.
Those things. Yeah. I just want my process to be sped up.
To be faster.
Well, and isn't that the American
But that's all control,
way?
right? Yeah, that's true. That's true too. I know I've seen myself personally make those baby steps and understanding with everything. I want them to be like a bigger step, and see it a little bit more tangibly, I suppose.
Well, and this probably won't make you, well, maybe it will make you feel better, but, at the same time, a lot of times what happens when someone changes very quickly is that it's an incident that you didn't want to have, and, some kind of unexpected incident. So be thankful in some ways that you have the time and the luxury in essence to take those baby steps, because again, what often causes a lot of change in someone's personality or their mindset is something that can often be negative, unfortunately. So maybe take that as almost thankful for that, even if it doesn't feel that way. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
My family had a job loss about 9 months ago, and so we've had to become progressively more frugal. Like, we didn't know it was going to last this long, and so we just get more frugal. There's been many struggles, but one of my big struggles is it's important to me to have like a cool, interesting life and do cool, interesting things.
Yes.
Figuring out how to do that with no budget is requiring a lot of creativity and a lot of problem solving. And I haven't struck upon, I figured out cooking. You can get really into cooking and do really interesting things when you're cooking, and it's something you can pair with friends and entertain. And I found a couple other things, but I'm really looking for resources on cheap entertainment and activities, and fun, interesting things to do as a family, and
which we had a podcast on, or the library, the public, all the entertainment you can get from the public library.
Oh, wow.
More fun than you realize until you get into it and you realize, wait, there's like movies and all sorts of fun resources here.
Yeah, I don't have trouble entertaining myself with the world of podcasts and books. I'm doing fine. It's family activities and
the dance parties, Laura, that I talked about.
Right.
I'm telling you follow and we don't even have like, the whatever game system that plays them. We don't even have that. We're just like going to YouTube and watching somebody else do it and then following that, which is
right. Yeah, we've seen that with our girls too, that they, we're trying to go to state parks here in Georgia, which I think I've taught to you guys. I don't know if I shared this. I've said it so many times, but it's like the Wild West here, right, in Georgia. Like we're, who knew that COVID was here, right? So, but anyhow, we're trying to do things like go to state parks, things that, are relatively safer, but they're less expensive. But, my kids come home and tell me that somebody's gone off to, near Daytona Beach for 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, we're not going to that county because it's bright red on the New York Times map. Like it's, and at the same time, we're trying to be more frugal during this time. It's very uncertain. And so, for us, for our family and our girls especially, it's another conversation around, hey, we're going to do some things differently. And what we hope is that in the future you'll thank us, but we're not doing all these, fancy things right now. And that's that's been some tough conversations that we've had here at home. And I don't know if that probably doesn't make you feel better, Laura, either, but that's, what we've focused on.
And I'll support you on that I have had my adult children come back and thank me for things that they said that they would never forgive me for before.
Right. Right. Oh, we're going to, the Chattahoochee Nature Center again. Okay. Well, yes, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And this has been a really challenging time for exactly what you were saying before, that locus of control. And actually, I have to say, in the financial therapy world, we actually found that people who were anxious are less anxious now.
Okay.
And we've been trying to figure out, why is that? And we think maybe part of it is that everybody, now they feel normal. Like it used to be they were the only ones, and they felt odd, and now everybody is anxious. So they're like,
interesting.
Yeah. Everybody is in this with me.
I was just listening to this podcast about how people are feeling less anxious because there's so many little things that just don't matter anymore. Like, what am I going to wear to girls' night? And what am I going to do this weekend? And instead, everyone is just anxious about the same main big problems versus all these tiny little things that all of a sudden people are like, this doesn't really matter anymore.
Yep.
Which is very interesting.
I think too, the decrease in scheduling. So for families or even individuals that were constantly going, whether that was traveling for work or managing a family, that calmed down. And I think a lot of individuals that either had anxiety about that, or maybe we didn't even recognize that we had anxiety about that, but we've sort of been able to take a deep breath too. So maybe part of it as well.
I will just throw in here that the mothers who are working at home with their kids there and supervising school and supervising summer are the heroes of COVID.
Yeah, that's been, yeah.
And one related comment, I was talking to a friend who has a friend in Europe who was in a country that was opening up, and her friend was having anxiety because she was so enjoying the COVID schedule and her time with her family, and she was really starting to get anxious that they were going to go back to the life that they had lived, which was hurry scurry, and so she was feeling anxiety come up, which I thought was interesting. But you have a choice,
right?
And that's what I try to put out there, is that now that this has happened and you've broken, my example is the Starbucks habit. Now that you've stopped the Starbucks habit, it's your choice as to whether you're going to go back to that habit or not, right?
Yep.
So are you going to choose to go back to it? And I actually have a client who meets his friends at Starbucks, and he was there first day that they were open, but that was his social circle, and it was that actually was adding, making his life more satisfying. But there's other people who it's they're a slave to that Starbucks habit, and they don't really want to, don't necessarily want it. It's become mindless. So now you have an opportunity to choose not to do that anymore.
Right.
And don't miss that opportunity to have that momentary cognitive choice of I am or I'm not, gonna go back on that path again.
Absolutely.
I will share that the one activity we found that I really, really, really am getting a kick out of is I've always wanted to be able to blow gigantic bubbles. I don't know if you've ever seen videos.
Oh, yeah.
With
the wands.
I researched MIT bubbles and Wiki bubbles, and I still have to do Caltech bubbles because nerds are going to love that. And we found these super secret ingredients that you get at Sprouts, but and this amazing bubble mixture, and we're just having so much fun, and we're sharing it with our friends, and it's not expensive, and it's just delightful.
That's fun.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's cool. I haven't seen anything like that. That's
yeah.
Cool.
I think that, yeah, I mean,